We got a fun one today. Get ready for a journey back to the 80s. You know, when artists weren't afraid to join forces in unexpected and unforgettable ways. On this edition of Professor of Rock, we're counting down the top 5 most interesting, most absorbing duets of the neon decade. From surprising combinations to boundary-pushing sounds. You know, in one strange duet today, a legend thought the demo of the eventual #1 song was dreadful. He had no desire to record the song in the same room as his counterpart. You'll find out why. In another song, the legendary duet partners only had a few hours to record their song. They were working against a non-negotiable deadline. But then to make matters worse, the famous diva who was part of it wanted the male singer's part, so he had to come up with a whole new take, a whole new part. And in yet another one, a legend had to get permission from his wife to hug his female partner. I'll also give you my pick for the worst duet ever of the decade. Stories coming up next. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer every December on network television, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. I know you'll dig this channel. We also have a Patreon below. And our t-shirt of the day is Toto. This is such a cool shirt. Get yours at the link below, 80stees.com. They have thousands of the coolest t-shirts you'll ever find. From bands to movies to TV shows, you're going to want to check it out. So today we're counting them down, the top 5 most interesting, most absorbing duets of the 80s. There were some great ones. I'm going to have some honorable mentions, but these ones are those powerful ones that you just can't deny. Coming in at number 5 on our countdown, we've got one that I definitely had to pick. It's one of the biggest hits ever. A little cheesy, but it's so good. Endless Love, spotlighting the pairing of 2 of the most famous vocalists in recorded music history, Lionel Richie and Diana Ross. Lionel Richie already a star as the soulful lead vocalist behind most of the Commodore's greatest hits is before he went solo. He received a call that would change his career. Franco Zeffirelli, the famed director of the movie Endless Love, wanted him to write the film's theme song. I want to share endless love. The task? Something sweeping and tender. He wanted something like Henry Mancini's beloved theme from Love Story. Eager to break into film scoring, Lionel Richie agreed immediately. He even had a melody ready for a piece that he'd written for the Commodores and never made it into the studio. But as he started in on it, the director changed his mind. He now wanted lyrics to it. Not just any lyrics, he wanted a full duet with none other than Diana Ross. This wasn't just background music anymore. It was going to be a dramatic, heartfelt song that would need to hold its own alongside the voices of the 2 legends. There's only you in my life. Bringing Lionel Richie and Diana Ross together to record Endless Love, that turned out to be an adventure. Or a disaster, whichever way you look at it. Time was tight when it came to recording Endless Love. Lionel Richie and Diana Ross had jam-packed schedules, and they had just one session to get it right. Now, years later, Richie admitted to The Sun that he saw the whole experience as a true disaster. Originally, he hadn't even written the song as a duet, but the record company had other ideas, and they brought in Diana Ross at the last second. My first love. Coordinating schedules, that was tough enough, but they finally arranged to meet at a studio in Reno, Nevada. It was the early morning of May 8th, 1981, just after Ross had wrapped up a concert in nearby Lake Tahoe. Richie flew in from LA. This was at around 3:30 a.m. They started the session. When Diana arrived, she surprised Lionel Richie by asking for his part, leaving him scrambling to improvise a new one that worked in a different key. The entire recording, it felt like a whirlwind. What we hear on the track is exactly what happened in the studio that day. They had no time for retakes. Endless Love had to go out the very next day for the movie. Despite the late hour, both singers poured everything into this recording, and you can hear it. By dawn, less than 2 hours later, their vocals were down on tape, capturing the magic of the song in one unforgettable take. 2 hearts that beat as one. It became the centerpiece of the movie and the film did pretty well in theaters, but the song, it was way bigger than the movie. It became the real blockbuster. It shot to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 9 weeks straight, from August 15th to October 10th, 1981. Top of all that, it also dominated the Billboard R&B and Adult Contemporary charts, and it landed at #7 in the UK. It actually became the most successful duet in history, surpassing the Everly Brothers' classic Wake Up Little Susie, which had held that record since 1957. It became the biggest hit of both of their careers, counting their work with the Supremes and the Commodores. All right, so coming in at #4, I have The Strangest of Bedfellows, Up Where We Belong by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warnes. In 1982, Up Where We Belong was born from the collaboration of 3 talented songwriters, Jack Nietzsche, Buffy St. Marie, and Will Jennings. The track was crafted for the iconic film An Officer and a Gentleman.
Special. And if you ask me, you ain't got no chance of being no officer. I ain't gonna quit. You're out.
The filmmakers knew they needed the perfect voice to bring out the perfect emotion for this song, and they got one of the prettiest voices of that time, Jennifer Warnes. She was recommended.
It's the right time of the night.
Now, apparently, Jennifer had a different vision for the song. She didn't just want to sing it solo, she thought it would be more powerful as a duet. And the singer she had in mind was none other than Joe Cocker. On February 24th, 1982, Joe took the stage at the Grammy Awards to perform I'm So Glad I'm Standing Here Today with the jazz group The Crusaders.
I'm so glad I'm standing here today.
Their collaboration on the track featured on a Crusaders album had earned a nomination for Best Inspirational Performance that year. Now, among the millions of TV viewers watching at home was Jennifer Warnes. She'd been a fan of Joe Cocker since her teenage years. She even had a poster of him on her wall from, his Woodstock performance, so iconic. As she watched him on stage, her admiration was as strong as ever. She would say, and I quote, "I was so moved, I was hollering out loud, jumping for joy, jumping up and down. After everything Joe had been through, his struggles with drugs and alcohol, he was back and in total command. I knew right then that I had to sing with him." Now, at first, director Taylor Hackford didn't want Warnes as the singer of the song. He thought her voice was a little too sweet for the track. But she ended up meeting with Joel Sill, the head of Paramount Pictures, and she pitched the idea of singing with Joe Cocker. Now, Joel thought it was a good idea, since the film centered around Richard Gere and Deborah Winger, and this duet would match the characters in a way, tough and gritty versus light and easy. But on paper, it was a strange pairing. I mean, you had the sweet voice Warnes and the gasoline and Nels tough voice of Joe Cocker. But they convinced Taylor Hackford, so they reached out to Joe Cocker. What ultimately convinced Joe to get involved was a small but powerful section of the song's lyrics. He later said, and I quote, "It was the up part, something about love lifts us up. That was what really made me realize this song had hit potential." So they had a demo recorded of the song, and everybody was convinced it was going to be a hit, except Joe Cocker. He thought the demo was dreadful. Cocker was adamant about recording the song on his own. So producer Stuart Levine, he had Jennifer lay down her vocals separately. Joe had taken a break from touring to fly in for this session, but when it came time to actually record, he was terrified. Joe didn't even want to step foot in the studio. It took a lot of convincing to even get him out of the hotel room and into the recording space. Cocker would say in a quote, "I'd sat with the words in the afternoon, but still hadn't remembered them. So we had to draw them up on a big blocks of wood and stuff." Another rumor was that Joe Cocker was terrified to sing with Jennifer Warnes. They managed to get a recording done, but their producer wasn't giving up on the idea of a duet. He needed to get them both in the booth together. Knowing the contrast between their voices would create something really magical. So finally, after a knockout, drag-out fight, Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warnes finally sang the song together, and they did it one take. Now, once it was finished, Joe Cocker had a shift in perspective about the song. He said, "I knew it was a number one. Other people were saying, well, perhaps, but I could just feel it." And of course, he was right. Up Where We Belong soared to number one on the Billboard Hot 100 in the fall of 1982, sold over 1 million copies. The single also climbed the top of the musical mountain in Canada, Australia, and South Africa, worldwide hit. It won an Oscar, and even though it seemed like a strange matchup on paper, Joe's rugged, gravelly voice complemented Jennifer's sweetness perfectly. Together, they brought the song's themes of life's challenges, love, and the hurdles, that we all try to overcome to life. It really is a masterpiece.
Is long.
So coming in at number 3, another song of pushing through adversity with two of the best of the 80s. I'm going Don't Give Up by Peter Gabriel featuring Kate Bush.
Don't give up.
A very interesting pairing for a duet indeed. Jill Gabriel, who was Peter's wife at the time, saw a newspaper article about a woman who jumped from a high-rise building with her child and ended her life. Now, she gave this article to Peter, and it was the original inspiration for the song, as I understand it. In an interview, Jill shared that Peter was heartbroken when he read it. Peter also mentioned that the TV show about unemployment and family struggles, along with a photo of Dorothea Lange of a family during the Dust Bowl, were key influences on the song.
'Cause you have friends.
Now, ultimately, Don't Give Up was a very personal song for Peter Gabriel. In 1985, he went through a really tough time, experiencing a nervous breakdown. We're close to it. During this challenging period, he wrote this song as a way to express his gratitude for the support he received from his family. The album that followed offers a raw look into his state of mind at the moment, a mix of high energy tracks like Big Time and Sledgehammer, but that was also balanced by more introspective and somber ones like In Your Eyes and Don't Give Up and Mercy Street. When talking about this song, Gabriel explained his message, and I quote, "The basic idea is that handling failure is one of the hardest things we have to learn to do." Now, the title of the song, that came from something Jill would say to her husband during these emotional struggles that he was going through. She said, "When he gets into very deep depressions, I always say, don't give up." I think the song is really about us.
Don't give up.
Don't Give Up. It was not originally a duet. It wasn't written as a duet. Peter Gabriel had to adjust the lyrics so that they would work for both a man and a woman to sing. Now, reflecting on that collaboration, Gabriel told Spin magazine in 1986, "The sensitive way Kate handled the back and forth on that song was really gratifying, because it's not just about a woman supporting a man in a tough relationship. The main thing dragging them down is unemployment, which was really tearing apart the social fabric of England at that time." He went on to say, "Without a sense of self-esteem, it's impossible to function."
You're not beaten yet.
Not only was Don't Give Up not meant to be a duet, but come to find out, Kate Bush wasn't actually Peter Gabriel's first choice as a duet partner either. This is really interesting. In an interview, Peter revealed that he had initially asked Dolly Parton to provide vocals for the track, but actually the country legend declined the offer. That's surprising. He said, and I quote, "There's an interesting story behind this song. When I first wrote it, there was a reference to American roots music, so it was suggested that Dolly Parton should sing on this one. Dolly reportedly turned down the opportunity to sing Don't Give Up with Peter Gabriel because she felt that the song's theme and the song's style, they just wouldn't align with her typical country music image, with some sources stating that she thought it might alienate some of her fans. Kate was excited to perform on the song with Gabriel. During the recording of the song, Daniel Lanois, producer of Peter's solo album, he was in awe of having someone of Kate Bush's caliber involved. He said, "We were all just thrilled to be in her presence. She's basically royalty around here." Now, while the recording itself went smoothly, it took a bit longer to finalize the rest of the tracks. At the time, Gabriel's 15-year marriage was on shaky ground. Actually, the couple would divorce a few years later in 1988. He actually made sure to call his wife for permission before they filmed the music video with that embrace with Kate Bush. He said in an interview, "I thought that 5 minutes of holding on tightly to Kate Bush in front of the world might not be the best thing for a shaky marriage. I felt like I really needed her blessing." Apparently, Jill was totally cool with it. As the third single release from So Don't Give Up did well, pretty much worldwide, Australia, Ireland, the Netherlands, Belgium, and the UK, it landed in the top 10. But here in America, the song languished in the upper reaches of the Billboard Hot 100. It went to number 72, which is crazy. But despite his poor chart performance, I find that Don't Give Up, it's really, to me, the most interesting duet of the 80s. Partly because of how brilliant Kate Bush and Peter Gabriel are together. But mainly because the theme of the song is so compelling. I can feel the pain behind it when they're singing. It resonates with me in a way that many of the most important songs in my life have connected. It really, truly is poetry in motion.
That river's flowing.
All right, we got two more to go, and I'll be shocked if you don't guess my number one. It's a rock duet, and it was a really easy choice. So take a guess in the comments. Let's see what you get. My number two pick, some may argue with it, but it defines the 80s so well. The big power ballad anthem. It's got two of the great voices on it. It's cheese-tastic, 80s cheese-tastic, and that makes it phenomenal. One of those songs that, people pretend not to like, but when nobody's looking, they're screaming the lyrics to the top of their lungs. It's just undeniable. I'm going with Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now by Starship. Featuring a powerful duet performance by two of the greatest voices ever, like I said, Mickey Thomas, Grace Slick, vice versa, co-written by Dionne Warren and Albert Hammond. Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now was recorded by Starship for their second studio album, No Protection, that came out in '87. The song also became the theme for the romantic comedy Mannequin, starring Andrew McCarthy and Kim Cattrall, another movie that's so 80s it hurts. Starship's third number one hit. Now, I had a chance to talk to Mickey Thomas and producer Narada Michael Walden about it. And here's what happened.
That's what we did. I said, okay, 3 o'clock next Thursday, we're going to pull over in the tour bus. I'll get on the payphone, I'll call you, and we'll figure out the key over the phone.
It's just crazy to think of it now, but
yeah.
It really was that way.
So we did. So I called him. Hey, how you doing? Okay, you ready to do this? Yeah. So he's got the keyboard on the other end of the phone. I'm singing a few lines, and he goes, all right, yeah, okay. Is that okay? Is that too high? Maybe down a half step, And so we figured out the key over the phone.
That is so cool.
Yeah. And then, so then when we got home, like the following week, he kind of had the bed ready, the basic track ready. And then we went in and did a few more overdubs. Craig played a solo. We did all the background vocals. Grace and I did our vocals.
But I had put it together where I'd wanted Grace to sing Mickey's low part, and I had it backwards at first. I had Grace doing the other, how do I say it? Grace was doing the low part, and Mickey was doing the high. But when I got Grace Inns doing the low part, it wasn't resonating in her voice. So I made an executive decision. I said, switch it. Grace, do Mickey's verse. And when she did that, it came to life. It came to life. It was like, whoa. Then I had to have Mick come back in and then do her part of the verse.
Is what I'm gonna do. Let 'em say we're crazy.
I'm so happy that I had the confidence to do that.
Okay, at the number one spot for the countdown of the top 5 most absorbing, most interesting duets of the 80s, I got Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie.
Under pressure.
It was a serendipitous moment when Freddie Mercury and David Bowie came together to record Under Pressure. Bowie had simply dropped by the recording studio in Switzerland where Queen was working on their album Hot Space, July of 1981. Queen, they were deep into recording that album at Mountain Studios. They'd been working on a track called Feel Like, but something wasn't clicking and they weren't happy with the results. Now, meanwhile, David Bowie was also at Mountain. He was putting down vocals for Cat People Putting Out Fire, which was the title track of the 1982 horror film of the same name. As fate would have it, the two artists crossed paths during their sessions. Wasn't the first time that Freddie and David had met, actually. The two singers first crossed paths 12 years before recording Under Pressure in 1969. Freddie Mercury was working at a boot stall in Kensington Market where he fitted David Bowie for a pair of boots. How about that? What started as a casual visit, it soon turned into something really magical. As the two artists began to jam, the chemistry between them was undeniable. They realized they have the makings of something special, and in the heat of the moment, they decided to write and record this song together. Now, the iconic bass riff that anchored the track came from Queen's John Deacon, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But with that, Under Pressure was born. True collaboration that would go on to define an era, and then some. Bowie ended up singing backing vocals for Queen's Cool Cat, but actually his contributions didn't make the final cut. He wasn't satisfied with his performance. But the spark between the two as they were doing that was crazy. It was amazing. After some casual jamming, they started to create something new. What emerged from that spontaneous session was Under Pressure. I mean, it was a true collaboration credited to all five musicians there, not just Freddie and David. With its unmistakable scat singing, showcasing the improvisational energy from that jam, they actually went into separate vocal booths and just sang whatever came into their head. The result was truly mesmerizing. A little bit more on that in a second. You know, there's been some confusion over who created the bass line, the addictive bass line. In a 1982 interview with Music Life magazine, John Deacon credited David Bowie with coming up with the riff. But in more recent interviews, both Brian May and Roger Taylor, they've given credit to Deacon. Now, Bowie on his website, he also clarified that the bass line was already in place before he even got involved. Roger Taylor, in an interview for the BBC documentary Queen, The Days of Our Lives, he confirmed that Deacon indeed came up with that bass line. Taylor recalled that during the recording sessions, Deacon repeatedly played the riff over and over again. But then after a dinner break, Deacon had trouble recalling the riff correctly, but Taylor was able to remember it. I'm so glad he remembered it. And we know how that goes. You think of something great and you think, I'll keep it in my head, it'll be fine. You don't write it down, you don't record it. And then all of a sudden, a couple hours, it's gone into the ether. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And actually, Brian May later cleared up the confusion in a 2016 article for Mirror Online. According to May, it wasn't Taylor who altered the riff, but it was David Bowie. The original riff started with 6 notes, played the same, followed by 1 note of fourth down. After the break, though, David Bowie unintentionally changed it, turning it into the version we know today. Ding, 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 right? And of course, a young Vanilla Ice, he heard that from his brother's record collection, and he decided to rip it off completely to steal it for his #1 hit, Ice Ice Baby. Anyway, to go into more detail about the spontaneous duet, Reinhold Mack, who worked on the production of Hot Space, shared an amusing story about the vocal recording for Under Pressure. Now, according to Mack, during the session, one of the singers would record their improvised vocals while the other was locked out of the studio. This way they couldn't hear what the other was doing. You know, this added an extra layer of spontaneity and surprise and magic into the process. So Mack recalled saying, Freddie was doing his parts. Out of the corner of my eye, I see David sneak his head in to listen. Then Freddie stepped out and David took his place. When Freddie came back down, he was pretty impressed by how David had built on what he'd done earlier. Freddie turned to me and said, "What do you think of this?" And I told him, well, it's kind of easy if you're just standing in the doorway and listening. At that, Freddie apparently had a few choice words for David Bowie. Oh, I would have loved to be in that session, a fly on the wall. While all the members of Queen contributed to the arrangement, according to bassist John Deacon, it was Freddie Mercury who played the key role as the primary musical songwriter for that track. A perfect blend of all their talents that would go on to become one of the most iconic songs ever. Although the chart position in America, it was a poor reflection on how the song would ultimately impact pop culture. Under Pressure, it was #1 in Canada and the Netherlands, and in the UK, it reached the top 5, but it stalled at number 29 here. In January 1982, it just couldn't go higher. And the worst duet of the 80s. Well, I gotta go with Opposites Attract by Paul Abdul and MC Scat Cat. Now, technically, it peaked in the early months of the 1990 at #1, was released in November of '89, and it's truly a crime against humanity. Kept some great songs out of #1, including Janie's Got a Gun by Aerosmith and Rome by the B-52s.
We come together 'cause opposites attract.
But what do you think? What is your #1 duet of the 80s? If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Check out the t-shirt of the day total below. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.